Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I dive in, share your city in the comments. What's everyone tuning in from? I walked in on my husband, Mark, whispering conspiratorially with our adopted son, Alex, right before Alex's college send-off party. I'd just come back from picking up a custom-made cake, a replica of Alex's university mascot, a fierce golden eagle. My heart was light, anticipating the celebration. But as I pushed open the kitchen door, I heard snippets of their hushed conversation. "She doesn't need to know." "Not yet," Mark was saying, his voice uncharacteristically low and intense. Alex, usually so open with me, nodded, his gaze flicking nervously towards the door. My older sister, Sarah, who had arrived early to help with decorations, saw my frozen stance, a confused frown creasing my forehead. She quickly stepped between me and the kitchen, her hand gently but firmly gripping my arm. "It's worse than you think, Evelyn," she whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of pity and alarm. "They've been planning this for years." The cake box slipped from my fingers, hitting the polished hardwood floor with a sickening thud, the carefully crafted golden eagle crumbling into sugary shards. "My name is Evelyn Reed, and I'm a mosaic artist. For 25 years, I've owned a small studio in a vibrant artistic corner of Portland, Oregon, known for its quirky boutiques and food trucks. My life revolved around the intricate patterns of shattered glass and the equally complex patterns of my family life. Mark, my husband of 20 years, was a software engineer, steady and outwardly devoted. Our home, a charming craftsman with a lush backyard filled with my beloved hydrangeas, was our sanctuary. Then there was Alex, our brilliant, kind, and seemingly loving son, whom we adopted when he was just 3 days old. He was our everything, the fulfillment of a dream after years of struggling with infertility. My days were a comforting rhythm of creative work, managing my studio, and ensuring our home was a haven. Alex, now 18, was about to embark on his journey to the University of California, Berkeley, to study astrophysics. We were immensely proud. He was a bright kid, always curious, always striving for excellence. He was the star of our small universe. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle whispers against the backdrop of our seemingly perfect life. Mark had become increasingly withdrawn over the past year, attributing it to stress at work. He'd often be on his phone, tucked away in his home office, long after his work hours, his conversations ending abruptly whenever I entered the room. He'd developed a habit of taking late-night calls, always stepping outside onto the porch, even in the biting Portland rain. When I'd ask, he'd offer vague explanations about client emergencies or late-stage project discussions. I'd usually accept them, dismissing a fleeting flicker of unease as my own anxieties. After all, he was a dedicated professional, and I trusted him implicitly. Alex, too, had started to change. He'd always been a mama's boy, sharing everything from his latest video game triumphs to his anxieties about school. But in recent months, he'd become secretive, guarded. He'd brush off my attempts at heart-to-heart talks, attributing his aloofness to pre-college jitters and the overwhelming pressure of preparing for his move. He spent an unusual amount of time on his laptop, always with the screen angled away from me, and if I came too close, he'd snap it shut. My attempts to bond over college preparations were met with lukewarm enthusiasm. He'd frequently tell me he was going to hang out with friends, but his explanations of who he was with or what they were doing became increasingly vague. Once, I saw him exchange a look with Mark, a conspiratorial glance over my head at the dinner table that lasted only a second but planted a seed of doubt. The little things unexplained charges on our joint credit card for luxury items neither Mark nor I had purchased, documents missing from Mark's home office, a strained silence that would descend whenever I entered a room where they were both present. I dismissed it all, telling myself it was typical teenage behavior, coupled with Mark's work-related stress. We were a family, and families weathered these small storms, right? Sarah, my older sister, always had a sharper eye than me. A retired investigative journalist, she had a knack for spotting inconsistencies. She'd visit often, claiming to just want to spend time with her favorite sister, but I noticed her subtle observations, the way her eyes lingered on Mark's phone when he received a message, the quiet intensity with which she'd listen to Alex's vague answers about his social life. A few weeks before the send-off, she pulled me aside. "Evelyn," she began, her voice low. "I don't want to worry you, but something feels off. Mark and Alex, they're acting strange." I shrugged it off, attributing it to Sarah's natural inclination to find a story in everything. "It's just college stress, Sarah, and Mark's work is demanding." She didn't press, but her gaze was knowing, a silent promise to keep watching. Little did I know, she had already begun her own quiet investigation. She was a woman who trusted her gut, and her gut was screaming. The days leading up to Alex's send-off were a whirlwind of activity. We were packing boxes, buying last-minute dorm essentials, and coordinating the party details. The college acceptance had been a moment of pure euphoria. We celebrated with a fancy dinner, popping a bottle of champagne, Alex beaming with pride. Mark had been unusually quiet that night, raising his glass with a forced smile that I now realized didn't quite reach his eyes. I remembered the odd questions Alex started asking me around that time, too. "Mom, what was the name of the adoption agency again?" Or, "Did we ever get a full medical history of my birth parents?" I'd answered openly, explaining that the adoption was closed, but we had some non-identifying information on his birth mother, a young woman who had wanted a better life for her child. I'd never seen these questions as anything more than a natural curiosity about his origins, a phase many adopted children go through. My world, a carefully constructed mosaic of love, trust, and shared dreams, was about to be shattered. The image of the crumbled golden eagle cake on my kitchen floor became a bitter metaphor for the truth I was about to confront. Sarah's words, "They've been planning this for years," echoed in my ears, chilling me to the bone. The send-off party, meant to be a joyous occasion, now loomed as a battlefield. I found myself in a daze as Sarah steered me to the living room, away from the kitchen where Mark and Alex were still, presumably unaware of my presence. My hands trembled, my breath catching in my throat. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" I managed to whisper, my voice hoarse with a sudden, inexplicable fear. Sarah sat me down, her expression grim. "Remember those red flags you dismissed? The late-night calls? The secretive behavior?" "I've been doing some digging, Evelyn. After our last conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling. I hired a private investigator a month ago. A discreet one, through an old contact." My mind reeled. A private investigator? For my family? It sounded like something out of a cheap novel. "What did you find?" The words tasted like ash. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "It's not just an affair, Evelyn. It's a lot more complicated. The PI found Mark has been systematically siphoning funds from your joint accounts for the past 3 years. Not just a little here and there, but significant amounts. He's been investing it in a shell company, registered under a fictitious name in Delaware. And the worst part..." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Alex is involved. Not fully aware of the financial fraud, I don't think, but he's been privy to Mark's secrets, covering for him." My head swam. Financial fraud? My Mark? The stable, dependable Mark? It was inconceivable. But why? "That's where it gets really ugly," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The PI tracked down the shell company's registered address. It leads to a small house in rural Washington state. And guess who lives there?" She showed me a photo on her phone. A woman, slender, with striking red hair, holding the hand of a young boy, no older than 10. The boy had Mark's eyes. "This is Monica Hayes, and that's their son, David. Mark's been living a double life. A secret family." The world tilted. My breath hitched. Secret family. The words reverberated in my mind, each syllable a hammer blow to my heart. Mark, my husband, the father of my adopted son, had another family, another son. For 3 years. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. The late-night calls, the mysterious expenses, the sudden withdrawals, they all clicked into place, forming a hideous, undeniable picture. And Alex? I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. How is Alex involved? It seems Alex discovered the affair about 6 months ago, Sarah explained, her voice softening with pity. He confronted Mark, who then manipulated him, promising him a share of the money he was siphoning off for his future, for his college tuition, for a new car. All the things he knew Alex wanted. He convinced Alex to keep it a secret, to cover for him. My son, my sweet, honest Alex, was complicit in this monstrous deceit. The betrayal wasn't just Mark's, it was Alex's too. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. The pain was searing, but beneath it, a slow-burning rage began to ignite. This wasn't just about a broken marriage, it was about a shattered trust, a fundamental disrespect, and a calculated financial assault on my life and our future. I looked at Sarah, my eyes burning with unshed tears and a newfound resolve. What do we do? Sarah, ever the strategist, had already formulated a plan. We can't let them get away with this, not with your money, not with your emotional well-being, and not without exposing the truth. We need to gather more concrete evidence, legally airtight. The PI is still working on tracking more of the financial trail, linking it directly to Mark and the shell company. We also need to secure all your joint assets, freeze accounts, and prepare for a swift divorce. And we need to do it before Alex leaves for college, before they can make any more moves. The next few weeks were a blur of hushed phone calls, clandestine meetings with the private investigator, and sleepless nights. The PI, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda, was a godsend. She uncovered a treasure trove of evidence, bank statements showing large transfers to the shell company, property deeds registered in Monica Hayes's name, but purchased with our money, and even a copy of David's birth certificate, with Mark's name listed as the father. The depth of Mark's deception was staggering. He had meticulously planned and executed this long con, all while maintaining the facade of a devoted husband and father. I felt a profound sense of grief, not just for the loss of my marriage, but for the son I thought I knew. Alex's complicity was a bitter pill to swallow. I remembered his evasiveness, his quick glances at Mark, his strange questions. He wasn't just a victim of Mark's manipulation, he was an active participant in my betrayal. The thought tore at my heart. How could the boy I raised, the child I loved unconditionally, do this to me? Sarah was my rock. She helped me navigate the emotional turmoil, reminding me of my strength, my resilience. She connected me with a sharp divorce attorney, a formidable woman named Brenda Sterling, known for her aggressive approach to financial fraud cases. Brenda immediately started the process of freezing our joint assets and preparing for the divorce proceedings. The goal was to secure every penny Mark had siphoned off, to ensure he couldn't hide any more assets, and to get full compensation for the emotional distress and financial damage he had caused. The day before Alex's send-off, Brenda Sterling and I had a final meeting. "We have everything we need, Evelyn," she stated, her voice calm and confident. "The evidence is overwhelming. We can serve Mark with the divorce papers and the fraud allegations tonight, or we can do it at the party tomorrow. What do you want to do?" My mind went back to Sarah's whispered words. They've been planning this for years. They had planned to blindside me, to take my money and my dignity. They had planned to celebrate Alex's departure while I remained oblivious. A cold resolve settled within me. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. I wasn't going to let them get away with their carefully constructed deception without a public reckoning. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. "At the party. The morning of the send-off party dawned bright and deceptively cheerful. My house, usually a hub of joyful chaos on such occasions, felt strangely hollow. The air was thick with unspoken tension, at least for me. Mark and Alex, however, were buzzing with anticipation. Mark was orchestrating last-minute tasks, his smile too wide, too eager. Alex was texting incessantly, a distant look in his eyes. They had no idea what was coming. The send-off was scheduled for 3 p.m., a casual backyard BBQ with close family and friends. My hydrangeas were in full bloom, their vibrant blues and purples a cruel contrast to the storm brewing within me. I meticulously prepared myself, choosing a simple yet elegant dress, applying my makeup with a steady hand. My trembling hands were a silent testament to the churning emotions inside me, but I refused to let them show. This was not a moment for weakness. This was a moment for justice. Sarah arrived early, her presence a silent anchor. Brenda, the PI, would be discreetly present, ready to document everything, as would Brenda Sterling, my attorney, who would arrive shortly before the planned revelation. Guests began to arrive, filling the backyard with cheerful chatter. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, all oblivious to the seismic shift about to occur. Mark played the role of the jovial host perfectly, a sickeningly convincing performance. Alex, too, was all smiles, accepting congratulations and well wishes from everyone. He even hugged me, a brief, almost perfunctory embrace, his eyes already scanning the crowd, looking for his friends. Around 4 p.m., with the food served and everyone settled, Mark cleared his throat, tapping a glass for attention. "All right, everyone," he announced, his voice booming with false cheer. "I think it's time for a few words about our incredible son, Alex, as he embarks on this exciting new chapter." A round of applause erupted. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it. I stepped forward, taking a deep breath. "Actually, Mark," I said, my voice clear and surprisingly steady, "I think I'd like to say a few words first." Mark looked surprised, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. But he quickly recovered, offering a tight, forced smile. Alex, however, stopped texting, his head snapping up, a strange look of apprehension on his face. I walked to the center of the patio, standing directly in front of Mark and Alex, facing the assembled guests. My eyes swept over the familiar faces, some of whom had known Mark and me for decades. The silence that descended was palpable. "Hello, everyone," I began, my voice gaining strength with each word. "Thank you all for coming today to celebrate Alex's achievement. We are all incredibly proud of him." I paused, allowing the warmth of my words to settle, to lull them into a false sense of security. Then, I shifted my gaze directly to Mark, my eyes boring into his. His jovial facade began to crack. "However," I continued, "there's something very important I need to share with you all today. Something that impacts not just my family, but potentially many of you here." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sarah gave me a subtle nod of encouragement from the sidelines. "For the past several years," I stated, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, "my husband, Mark, has been living a double life. He has systematically defrauded me, our family, and by extension, potentially some of you who may have invested with him or trusted his financial advice." A gasp went through the crowd. Mark's face went ashen, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Alex, beside him, looked utterly terrified, his earlier bravado completely gone. "Mark has been siphoning off substantial amounts of money from our joint accounts," I explained, "funneling it into a shell company. This money was then used to support a secret family, a woman named Monica Hayes, and their 10-year-old son, David, who lives in Washington State." The gasp this time was louder, an audible collective shockwave. Faces in the crowd registered a mixture of horror, outrage, and disbelief. Some people pointed at Mark, whispering furiously, His face was a mask of pure terror, his eyes darting frantically around the crowd, searching for an escape. "I have here," I said, pulling out a folder from the elegant clutch I carried, "irrefutable evidence. Bank statements, property deeds, birth certificates, and detailed reports from a private investigator. Evidence that proves Mark's calculated betrayal and financial fraud." I held up the folder, its contents a damning testament to his deceit. "And sadly," I continued, my voice cracking slightly as I turned to Alex, "my adopted son, Alex, has been aware of this for several months. He has actively covered for Mark, choosing to protect his secrets in exchange for financial incentives for his own future." Alex flinched as if struck. Tears welled in his eyes, but I refused to let his sorrow sway me. He had made his choice. Mark finally found his voice, a choked, desperate sound. "Evelyn, no! You're making a mistake. This isn't true." He lunged towards me, but Sarah, anticipating his move, stepped in front of me, blocking him. My attorney, Brenda Sterling, who had quietly positioned herself near the gate, now stepped forward, holding up a thick envelope. "Mark Reed," she announced, her voice firm and authoritative, "you are hereby served with divorce papers, a restraining order, and notice of intent to prosecute for financial fraud, including embezzlement and wire fraud. The Portland Police Department has been fully briefed, and an arrest warrant is imminent." Just as Brenda finished speaking, 2 uniformed police officers quietly entered the backyard from a side gate, their presence a stark punctuation mark to the unfolding drama. They walked directly towards Mark, who stood frozen, his face a sickly shade of green. The crowd parted, creating a path for them. "Mark Reed," one of the officers stated calmly, "we have an active warrant for your arrest on charges of financial fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As the officer began to read him his rights, Mark slumped, his resistance evaporating. He offered no protest as they cuffed him and led him away, the clinking of the handcuffs a chilling sound that cut through the stunned silence. The party dissolved into chaos. Guests whispered, some openly weeping, others expressing outrage. Alex, pale and trembling, tried to approach me, but I turned away, the pain of his complicity too raw, too fresh. His friends, who had been witnessing the entire scene, looked at him with a mixture of pity and disgust, some shaking their heads, others discreetly backing away. His college send-off had become his father's public downfall and his own shaming. Brenda Sterling stayed with me, addressing the remaining shocked guests, assuring them that I would pursue legal action to recover all stolen funds. Sarah, ever the protector, ushered people out, offering explanations and comfort. The air was thick with the stench of betrayal, but also, surprisingly, with a sense of vindication. The truth, harsh and brutal, was finally out. In the aftermath of the send-off, the silence in my Craftsman house was deafening. Mark was in jail, held without bail due to the severity of the financial fraud charges and the evidence presented. The news of his arrest and the scandalous details of his double life spread like wildfire through our close-knit Portland community. My phone rang constantly, with calls from sympathetic friends, bewildered acquaintances, and even a few local reporters seeking interviews. I declined all media requests, choosing to deal with this deeply personal trauma in private, surrounded by my closest allies. The legal proceedings were swift and brutal. Brenda Sterling was a force of nature. Within weeks, Mark was formally charged with multiple counts of embezzlement, wire fraud, and grand larceny. The evidence was indeed overwhelming. The meticulously documented transfers to the shell company, the fake business registrations, and the clear paper trail linking him to Monica Hayes and their hidden life. Mark, facing decades in prison, eventually opted for a plea bargain. He confessed to the fraud, returned a significant portion of the stolen funds from the shell company's accounts, and agreed to relinquish all claims to our marital assets, including the house and my studio. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, a stark consequence for his years of deceit. The financial recovery, while satisfying, was only one part of the healing process. The emotional scars ran deeper. The most painful fallout was with Alex. He tried to apologize, sending me text messages and leaving voicemails filled with remorse. He explained how Mark had manipulated him, preying on his desire for independence and financial freedom, promising him a secure future if he kept silent. He claimed he didn't fully understand the depth of his father's fraud, believing it was just a secret affair and some creative accounting. While I understood the manipulation, his willing complicity still stung. He had chosen to prioritize his father's secrets and his own self-interest over loyalty to me, the mother who had raised him with unconditional love. I wasn't ready to forgive. The trust was shattered. I told him I needed time, a lot of time to process everything. He left for Berkeley a week later, not with a celebratory send-off, but with a quiet, somber departure. I didn't see him off. The distance, both physical and emotional, was necessary. It hurt, an aching void where my unconditional love for him once resided. But I knew I couldn't rebuild anything on the ruins of betrayal without first acknowledging the pain. The healing process was slow, like the intricate work of repairing a damaged mosaic. I started therapy, processing the grief, the anger, and the profound sense of loss. My studio became my sanctuary once more, the act of creating art a meditative balm for my wounded soul. I poured my emotions into my work, transforming shattered glass into beautiful, resilient patterns, much like I was trying to do with my own life. I began a new series, focusing on themes of resilience and rebirth, each piece reflecting a stage of my journey from victim to survivor. Sarah remained my unwavering support, a fierce protector and a gentle confidant. She helped me reestablish my financial independence, ensuring all accounts were solely in my name, and encouraged me to reclaim my life. My friends rallied around me, offering comfort, meals, and simply their presence. The community, initially shocked, soon showed an outpouring of support, many expressing admiration for my courage in exposing the truth. Over the months, as Mark served his sentence and Alex adjusted to college life, a fragile new beginning started to emerge. I learned to embrace my newfound independence. I traveled, something I had always wanted to do but had postponed for years. I reinvested in my business, expanding my studio, and taking on larger, more ambitious projects. The financial recovery from Mark's fraud allowed me to secure my future, but the emotional recovery was a journey of self-discovery. I had moments of intense sadness, missing the family I thought I had, the future I had envisioned. But these moments were gradually replaced by a quiet sense of peace. I realized that my worth was not defined by my relationships, but by my own strength, my integrity, and my ability to navigate profound adversity. I learned to trust my instincts again, to recognize red flags, and to prioritize my own well-being. As for Alex, we maintained sporadic contact. His messages became less about his remorse and more about his life at Berkeley, his studies, his friends. He seemed to be finding his own footing, grappling with the consequences of his choices. I didn't reach out for a long time, needing the space to heal without the burden of his betrayal. But one day, almost a year after the send-off, he sent me a long, heartfelt email. He recounted his experiences in therapy, the shame he felt, and how he was trying to make amends. He asked for nothing, simply expressed his understanding of my need for distance and his hope for eventual reconciliation whenever I was ready. It was a small step, a tentative olive branch. I didn't respond immediately, but reading his words, I felt a flicker of hope, a tiny spark in the mosaic of my fractured heart. Perhaps one day we could rebuild a relationship, albeit a different one based on honesty and genuine understanding. Partial forgiveness, perhaps, or at least a path towards it. My journey wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it into a stronger, more resilient future. The betrayal had shattered my world, but it had also cleared the way for a truer, more authentic life. I was no longer a woman defined by her husband's deceit or her son's complicity. I was Evelyn Reed, mosaic artist, survivor, and a woman who had found her voice, her strength, and her unwavering sense of self. If this story resonated, hit like, comment 1 below, and share your own betrayal tale. Subscribe for more.